But I remember being in America, especially with the children, everyone's like, okay, is this child doing this? Is this child doing this? When are you doing soccer practice? When are you doing this? And here, everyone is just like, oh, let's visit each other. Let's spend time with one another. And all these extracurricular activities just are not as needful to everyone.
Welcome back to the No Higher Calling podcast. We are continuing on in the Missionary Monday series, and I hope that you have enjoyed this as much as I have. I really wish that I could just travel all over the world, but that's not possible. So I get to do it through friends that God has given me around the world, and I love getting to do this and hear about different places and people and different needs of the gospel around the world. So today I have with me Julie Knickerbocker. Julie, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the podcast.
Yes. So we know each other from our alma mater. We both graduated from Crown College. And you guys have been in Africa for a little while now, haven't you?
We have. We got here in August of 2014, so it's been almost 11 years.
Okay, wow. I got married in July of 2014. So I should be able to remember that anniversary you have coming up. Awesome. Well, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, and kind of the ministry God has you doing there?
Okay, well, we are the Knickerbockers, and we are living in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso. It's in West Africa, and it's not a made-up name. I promise you it does exist. And we have three kids. The oldest one is Alina. She's 8 years old. And then we have Kezia, who just turned 7. And we also have Corbin, and he is 5 years old. Or no, he's 4. Sorry. I keep thinking he's 5, but he's 4. And we are serving here. We've been here, like I said, 11 years, and we have 2 churches now. The first church plant is about 5 minutes from where we currently live on the south side of the capital city. And then almost 2 years ago now, we officially started a Bible study on the other side of town, which is about 40 minutes from here. And that will be our second church plant. So it's kind of getting started right now.
Okay, neat. Well, that is so exciting. What language do they speak there?
They speak mainly French. That's the main
Okay,
language for the country.
that's what I thought because you're originally from Canada and you speak French, correct?
Yes. So I grew up in Quebec, Canada, and eventually I moved to America. And Stephen, my husband, was a missionary kid to France. So when we met actually at Bible college, that was the first thing that sort of put us together was the French language. And so that's how we got to know each other. We both had a burden for French-speaking people. And so obviously we got married. It was just so easy. And
Everything
now
fits,
we're
why
here.
not?
It really did. I think everybody else told us, I think you all will probably get married. And I was like, I don't think you need to tell me what to do, but they were all right.
Well, it's funny how God works from Canada to a missionary kid in France, getting
Mhm.
married, and then serving God in a French-speaking West African country. Like,
Yes.
wow,
It
that's just
only God could have put it together.
so when you got there, did you have any, I know sometimes dialects and things can be different. Did you have to go through any language school, language learning, or did you pretty much just transition pretty well?
I feel like we transitioned pretty well, both of us, because Burkina was colonized by France so many years ago. Um, Obviously, the French dialect here has, some nuances, like different expressions that they use that are not common to either Stephen or I. But I think my biggest struggle was it would be like comparing American English to British English. It would
Mhm.
like here they use the French dialect from France, and they really struggled with understanding my French accent, which would be like an American French accent. And
Okay.
so when I talk to people here, I actually have to use the accent that my husband uses. And that was a challenge. It still is every once in a while because I feel like it's unnatural.
Mhm.
I speak French fluently, but I have to do it with an accent that's not my own
Yeah.
for them to understand me properly. And so that was definitely the biggest challenge when we got here for me.
Mhm.
Um, but I mean, I was able to definitely understand people, talk
Yeah.
with them. It just, I was like putting on an accent for them. So now it's easier to do.
Well, good. So, what was it like going from the climate of Canada to Burkina?
It was hard. It was so hard. Um, You know, my family, they asked, they're like, oh, so you're going to Africa? So what's the temperatures there going to be like? And, you know, in Canada, we go swimming when it's like 65, 70 degrees.
Mhm.
And here in the heat season, like it can go up to like 120. And it's just so hot. And, you know, I think the Lord just made our bodies in a specific way where you just adjust over time.
Mhm.
I don't think I will ever fully adjust, especially in this heat season where it just stays hot for so long. But
Mhm.
like it takes a good year and you kind of suffer through it a little bit. And then after that, your body adjusts and you're like, okay, I know what to expect. My body knows what to expect. I
Yeah.
will sweat more, but it's going to be okay.
Yes.
So that's kind of how it was.
Yeah. So, how close are you to the equator? You're a little bit north?
Yes, we're a little bit north. We're pretty close to it. We're not on it, so
Okay.
I don't know. I don't have a map,
Yeah.
but yeah, if you look at the Sahara Desert, we're right at the bottom
Mm.
of the Sahara Desert. So
Okay.
kind of think of it as like Arizona climate on
Okay.
steroids.
Yes. Wow. Well, before we jump into kind of more of a spiritual aspect of things, can you share with us what is life like for you in Burkina? What do you eat? What do you see? How is it different there from maybe what you had in the States or in Canada? What are some things you love about the life there?
I think life here is just very, in a way, slow, and I love that about this country, about the culture here. I think in America, everything is very scheduled, and I love schedules. I thrive on schedules. I love being able to plan everything out. But I remember being in America, especially with the children, everyone's like, okay, is this child doing this? Is this child doing this? When are you doing soccer practice? When are you doing this? And here, everyone is just like, oh, let's visit each other. Let's spend time with one another. And all these extracurricular activities just are not as needful to everyone. And I love that because it's a slower pace of life. Relationships are a lot more intentional, they're a lot more important. And I love that my kids get to grow up in that kind of environment where there's no pressure for them to succeed at all these other things, which I want them to. But they don't have to, according to society. They they love to spend time with other people. And I love that about this country. Life is definitely very different. I mean, the moment we go outside, I don't mind driving in the States. Driving is not my favorite thing, but here it's very stressful. There's just motorcycles everywhere. I mean, you've got like goats crossing the road, you got people, there's sheep and cows and people going the wrong direction. It's a little bit of a mess as far as traffic is concerned. So getting from point A to point B, sometimes it's not very far, but it takes longer just because you have to be a lot more cautious of how you drive and
Mm-hmm.
depending on where you're going. As far as food, we eat a lot of rice and sauces. We probably eat Burkinabe food 5 to 6 times a week. We love it. I mean, there's peanut sauce that you put over rice. There's a leaf sauce that's made with roselle leaves that you can put over rice, or like a dough that's made with corn.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Palm kernel sauce. There's just lots of vegetables turned into sauce that you put over a starch of some sort.
Yeah.
So that's about what we eat all the time. I know whenever our kids leave Burkina and we go back anywhere in the world, they're like, where's the rice? Because they're so used to eating it just about every day. And, you know, we're given sandwiches, which is wonderful, or
Yeah.
French fries. And they're like, but we want rice. Like, you're not getting rice today.
You know, that's so funny. So my son, he's going on 7. He does not like rice at all. We actually eat a lot more rice living in Australia than we ever did in the States. Um, it's not quite the staple that it is in other parts of the world, but it is a lot more of the diet than what we're used to. And he always, oh, rice again. And I've told him, I was like, you better be lucky because a lot of people that like it's breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you get rice. So,
Right. It's true. We do have one meal here that my son, it's called babenda, and it would be like a risotto almost, but it's with leaves and it's a little bit bitter, and he just
mhm.
cannot. It's like the traditional meal of this country, and he just can't. He'll gag, and I'm like, bud, you really gotta try. Like this is embarrassing to these poor Burkinabes that are sitting with us, and like you're supposed to like this, and he's like, I just don't like it.
Oh, well,
So he
maybe it'll
tries.
grow on him in the coming years.
Yes, that's we'll see.
Yeah. So when we think Africa, we obviously think a lot of animals. Do you get a lot of wildlife where you are?
Not so much, just because we
There's goats
are
and
in like
sheep?
such a dry, yeah, lots of goats everywhere. I mean, we have herds of goats, herds of cow,
Mhm,
sheep. There's a place about 20 minutes from our house where it's a lake that has these, they consider them sacred crocodiles. So that's
mhm,
probably like our one main attraction, especially here in town, the crocodiles in this area.
mhm.
And the neat thing about that is you can actually go and you sit on the crocs and you'll take your picture and then you kind of walk away. And so we've done that several times now. We haven't done it with the kids because I'm still like, well, these are little children, especially our youngest. And I'm like, he kind of looks like a chicken. So let's
I
just
was
make
gonna
sure
say
that these
they're
crocs.
alive. Oh my word.
Oh, yes, they're alive and there's many of them. And sometimes I'm like, just in case there's one hiding in like the bushes, we're not taking the kids yet. We'll wait till they're older adults to make
That
their
could be like
decision.
a rite of passage experience or something. You've now become a man. You sat on the crocodile.
Right. So, I mean, it's
Oh,
a neat
wow.
experience, but
Mm,
yeah, it's definitely not the safest, I guess.
yeah. That is so neat. So actually, the kids and I in our homeschooling right now are learning about Africa. So it's been really neat to just see the culture come through. Often a lot of similarities within countries, but yet such distinct differences. But one of the things that the kids are loving is all of the color, just how
Mhm.
brightly colored everything is. Is it like that there in Burkina?
Yes, especially color comes out with clothing. People love color in their clothes. If you look at the traditional way that people dress with their pang, it's just full of colors. And, Stevie and I and the kids were just on vacation visiting his family in Europe. And, everything there is like everyone's wearing black, gray, white, and it's very plain. And I was like, I kind of miss the colors of Africa where
Hmm.
everything is bright and they love it. Even decorations for weddings and churches, everything is just these neon colors everywhere. And it's just very joyful.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah,
yes, lots
I
of
love that
colors.
too. I've loved that as we study. And the kids, they have a lot of like art and drawing exercises. So they're always like all the rainbows laid out. They want to get all the colors in. So
Hmm.
that's neat. What is it like to go shopping for you?
Shopping is kind of like if you took Walmart and every department was separated into a different store. That's what
Okay.
it's like.
So you
So
still have
like
a store that you go in. It's not kind of like an open air market type thing.
there's a choice now, especially the capital has changed a lot in the last
Hmm.
several years. And so now we have some stores that have recently come in. One of them is a French brand, it's called Super U. And so you go in and it kind of gives you that idea of like a superstore where like there's a meat counter, some fresh stuff and like all the canned goods. And it's very nice. There's a few other places like that around town, but most of the time it's like we'll go one place to get our fresh vegetables from the lady on the side of the road or the market. I prefer the lady on the side of the road. It's just more convenient.
Hmm.
Because then it just park your car, get out, get your vegetables and your fruit, go back in, and then you'll get your meat somewhere else. You get your clothes somewhere else. You get your gas somewhere else. So, yeah, running errands definitely. It's like running around all day until you get all your things.
Yes. Well, neat. What is the dominant religion there?
Islam. Islam is definitely dominant. I'd say it's probably about 60%, maybe more,
Hmm.
um, Muslim here, and then about 20% Catholic, and the rest would be like all different religions. So like you'd have all the Protestant denominations and like anything else that fits into like others, including animism.
Okay.
So most people would consider themselves Muslim, especially the business people
Hmm.
here. There's this saying in
So,
Burkina.
yeah.
Sorry, there's a saying in Burkina about religion where they say, we're 50% Muslim, 50% Catholic, but 100% animist. And so no matter what, they always think back to their ancestral roots and their ancestral religion.
Hmm. So does that, I'm assuming, provide a challenge in presenting the gospel to them?
Uh, in a certain way, it does. I think the nice thing about presenting the gospel to Muslim people is that you start from scratch. And
Hmm.
so, you can bring in different stories in the Bible that they also happen to have a version of in the Quran. So, like when Abraham went to sacrifice his son, they can relate to that because they celebrate Tabaski, which is when, you know, according to them, Abraham brought um, in Ishmael and sacrificed him. And so, but then we can talk about the lamb being a representation of Christ and then bring in the gospel through that way. And so there's a challenge, but at the same time, there's not been a Christian foundation that's been laid for them, as opposed to with Catholicism or with like the Assemblies of God, where people believe that everything is works based or that their salvation can be lost. We have to, in a way, correct that for them to understand that salvation is in Christ alone. And so there's a challenge, I think, no matter who you share with.
Mhm.
I think with Muslims, obviously, right away when they hear Christianity, they'll be more closed to it just because they're like, oh, well, that's not our branch.
Yeah.
Um, but some are still very open. Though people in Burkina are very kind, even though they may not agree with you, they will sit down and listen to you. And so
Mhm.
that's been a blessing for us here.
Yeah. Great. Well, I've been trying to ask the different missionaries to share something that God has taught you while being on the field. I get that that's a really big question to try to answer.
It
So maybe
is.
like a highlight, but even it could be something at present. Just something that the experiences that you have had in a different culture, in a different place with different people, that may be unique to that experience.
Yeah, I mean, I re- it's such a big and broad question, but I think when I really think through, okay, what has God taught me this entire time that we have been in Burkina, if like with all these, like you said, different experiences, um, I think I'm a very fearful person when I really narrow down to like how I act.
Mhm.
And I don't easily trust people. And in that same way, I don't easily trust the Lord. It's a very big challenge for me. And I think right away when we first got to Burkina, um, the Lord taught me to just learn to trust him completely. It's so easy on deputation to say, of course, we're trusting the Lord. We gave our lives to him and now we're ready to go serve him in a foreign country. But to actually put that into practice once you're here, you're by yourself.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's sometimes other missionaries there, but they're not living in your house with you, and they're not walking with the Lord for you. And
Yeah.
you have to just trust the Lord, and you have to give over all those fears to Him. And I think one of the biggest encouragements to me was, this is my life psalm, is Psalm 27. And the Bible just teaches us that, the Lord is my light and my salvation. In whom shall I
Mhm.
fear? And I've just committed that to study and to memory. And then there's also Psalm 56. I'm looking at the Bible right now. It says, what time I am afraid, I will trust in thee.
Yeah.
And there's just been so many moments on the field where fear came in. And like, for example, when we first got to Burkina, it was about 10 days after we arrived. I gave birth to our first son and he passed away. And I just remember sitting there thinking, we just arrived on the field. We just gave birth. Everything was fine. And this happened. I'm like, I don't even know how to process these emotions. And there's just that fear of what's happening next, and learning to just give that over to the Lord and trusting in him, and whatever was happening in that moment was, it was a challenge for us, but it was definitely from the very beginning of our time here, um, a foundation as to how we were going to live our life. And I would never wish that on anyone, but I'm thankful for the lessons that I got from it.
Yeah.
Because I was able to see God at work and him encourage us through those very difficult months afterwards. And here people just process things a lot quicker. They don't really dwell on sadness. And so like even after Nathan passed away, I mean, we buried him the next day and I was still recovering from childbirth. And then it was just over. And for everybody else, they're like, oh, don't worry, you'll get over it. I'm like, I don't think so. But the Lord really helped us. And Stephen even told me, the day of the birth, he said, the Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away, and blessed be his name. And that was the first thing that came out of his mouth. And I think that that was a good way to lay a foundation for what God was going to do with us in Burkina Faso, in ministry, in life. I mean, then after that, of course, there was fear. What if we end up expecting again? Is the same thing going to happen? And just giving that over to the Lord. And then we have been through, I don't even know how many coups d'etats now in this country. On deputation, like, oh yeah, Burkina is a great country. It's so stable. There's not been a problem in over 30 years. And of course, as soon as we said that, we got to the field and the president that was in power got thrown out and there was a coup. And then there was another coup after that. And then a few years later, there was another coup. And we're currently living in a, coup where the guy in charge is not the one that was elected. And there's always fear when it comes to that, because sometimes it gets violent and sometimes there's gunshots outside, or there's, one time there's a missile that went over our house. I was like, wow, this is real. And then
Yeah.
other times it's very peaceful, but everything is very uncertain. And so learning to trust the Lord through those moments and knowing he's in charge. I'm not in charge. And like I said, I'm a planner. I like to have my list. I like to know exactly what's happening every single day. And sometimes God just looks at the list and takes it, balls it up and says, okay, your plans are nice, but I have something else for you. And I'm like, okay, Lord, whatever you have, I need to be okay with it, and I need to be ready. And, you know, same thing with ministry. Like we've had people come in, people go out, you invest and you love people and they're wonderful. And you see some that grow in the Lord and that their lives are completely changed. And then you see some that you invest in, then they just choose not to. And you can get so hurt by that. And learning to just let that go has been very difficult. But once again, that's probably the one thing that he's been teaching me the most lately. Last year, near the end of the year, of course, we inaugurated the second church, and it was just so exciting. All the people at the first church went were so excited about this moment, and we had been praying towards it, working towards it. And the people obviously at the second church plant, like big celebration, all happy. And then I think it was 2 days before, one of the men that was in charge over there just decided to turn against us completely. It's just a big, big mess. And we thought, I don't know what's happening. It was very discouraging. But last minute, Stephen said, we're going to keep going forward with the Lord. No matter what, we're going to still inaugurate this church because these people are there and they want this church there. And the Lord still blessed, but there were always obstacles. And and even after that, another man that we were training decided to leave us. And this was, 7 years of training this man, and he left. And you just wonder, like, what am I doing? How do I go forward after this? But I read earlier in the year in Acts where Saul and Barnabas were going from place to place, and then they ended up at the synagogue in Antioch. And Paul preached the gospel basically from like A to Z, where he said, this is everything that's happening in the Old Testament. Here's Christ and what he represents. And everybody heard the truth and they rejected them. And they gave their heart, they gave their everything. They basically said, I have given you everything. And those people rejected them. And the next thing they did is they just shook off the dust from their feet. And I think in those moments when you go through like so many hard times, or you look
Mhm.
at a situation, it's just so hard to say, am I able to just shake off the dust and move on? And, we live in a very dusty country. Burkina is so dusty. There's dust everywhere. If I go outside barefooted, the first thing I do is I kind of rub my feet together right before I come in the house, or I'll use my hands and just sort of shake off the dust. And I
Mhm.
do that every day, all the time. And it's almost subconscious. I don't think about it, I just do it. And it just really made me think, with all these things, especially this year that have happened that are hurtful,
Mhm.
but I need to move forward and move past it in order to really reach people. Am I really able to shake off that dust? Just shake it off.
Mhm.
Not that I don't care. I do care. And I do love those people. But the Lord wants me to keep moving forward. The Lord wants us to invest in the lives of those that are here, that are present, and we
Mhm.
can't keep dwelling on the past. And so to just be able to be like Saul and Barnabas and shake off the dust, like that's hard. And so I know the Lord's working on me with that.
Yeah.
And then if you keep reading in Corinthians, it's chapter 16, 1 Corinthians 16, and you get to a point where Paul is talking about the house of Stephanus. And I was like, oh, Stephanus. I'm like, it sounds like Stephen, my husband's name. And then it talks about how, here, I'll just read it right here. It says, I beseech you, brethren, ye know the house of Stephanus, that it is the first fruit of Achaia, and that they have addicted themselves to the ministry of the saints. I was like, addicted themselves. Like that man's testimony, his entire household, their testimony is that they addicted themselves to ministering to others. And I'm like, that's my life's work. I'm here in Burkina and I want to minister to others. Like the Lord did something in me and I'm to represent him. I was like, but am I addicted to ministering to the saints? Because I know that if I'm addicted to it, like I love my coffee in the morning. If I don't get my coffee in the morning, I struggle. Like I need that coffee. And I
Yeah.
go to bed at night thinking, I can't wait to have my coffee in the morning. Like that's how much I love my coffee. And, it makes me think like, okay, do I get up in the morning or do I even go to sleep at night? Like, oh, I can't wait to go and visit this person. I can't wait to minister to this person that the Lord has put in my life. Am I so addicted to ministering to them? Because even further down in verse 17, Paul says, I am glad of the coming of Stephanus. And then he mentions two other men. For that which was lacking on your part, they have supplied, for they have refreshed my spirit and yours. Like, is that my testimony? When people see
Mhm.
me coming here in this country or anywhere, are they feeling refreshed by what I'm coming to share with them? When they
Yeah.
spend time with me, do they feel like they've been refreshed by the word of the Lord? And I know I can't do that if I'm dwelling on the past. I know I can't do that if all I look at is the hurts and the problems. And, that's not just with missions, that's with anything. Um, you work any job anywhere in the world, like there's going to be problems. Everybody in their family, there's going to be difficulties. There's going to be moments where you're discouraged, but you do have to learn to shake that off and move forward. And then to be addicted to ministering to others. Like I, I can think of certain people that have devoted so much to me to encourage me as a teenager, as a young woman, and that have loved me. They have sacrificed. And I'm like, those are the people that I remember made a difference in my life. And I want to be like that for somebody else. And so I think this passage really helped me, especially after everything that happened over Christmas and a little bit after. I was very discouraged. But that helped me to, okay, just to say, Julie, it's okay. The Lord's got this. He's been good. He's always been good. He's taken care of you through all the difficulties of the past, through all those moments where you had fear in your life. And he was still there and he was still
Mhm.
teaching you things. And now he just wants you to be faithful. The Lord just requires for us to be faithful. He wants you to be faithfully ministering to others.
Mhm.
And now my challenge is to be so faithfully ministering that I feel like I'm addicted to it because I
Yeah.
know I'm not there. I want to be there, but I have to motivate myself every day to do that.
Mhm.
And it's a habit that just needs to be worked on. But that's what the Lord's teaching me right now.
Yeah. Well, I think that's so good. And I'm glad that you mentioned the whole shake it off. Because I feel like, especially maybe in the States and kind of in the Western countries, that's not kind of what's going on right now. And I'm not saying that there's not hurt and different things, and I get that, but there's not a mentality of just let it go, forgive, and
Mhm.
move on for Christ. There's this, I just kind of want to wallow in victimhood maybe. And I
Right.
try to say that sensitively because I understand different situations. But I do understand, even just in the little bit of ministry that we've had, um, it's not always easy.
No.
And often it's actually quite the opposite. And it could be easy to allow yourself to become defeated.
Mhm.
But you have to remember who you're doing it for, and it's Christ. And I really appreciate you sharing just the different things that you all have walked through. I remember when you lost your son, and I remember thinking like, wow, you just got there, and that's a lot. That's a lot to go through. And especially you read these biographies of missionaries, and I don't know, they put the hard stuff in there, but as a teenager, I read the highlights like, this is
Mhm.
heroic, this is adventurous, look how God worked, look at everybody that was saved. I want to do that. And then sometimes you live a life of ministry and you're like, wow, there's a lot of, there's some mountain peaks, but there's a lot in between there. And that can be challenging, but it's an encouragement to me personally. And I know it's going to be to other women who watch this to just see someone who has had highs and has had very low lows, but who has continued to follow the Lord. And I'm over halfway through the year of this series, and it's been really neat to see the different women that God has just orchestrated for me to interview. When I first started, it was a lot of young missionaries that were just starting out like me. And then I thought, okay, I need some like veteran experience to speak. So I kind of swung the other end and had a few ladies who'd been on the field 20 years or so. And then you and another lady that I actually interviewed last month, you've been on the field about that decade mark. So it's been neat to see the different perspectives and lessons that God is teaching. But I'm really enjoying, just for me personally, those who have been on the field 10 years, 20 years, who can look back and see God's faithfulness kind of
Mhm.
all along the way and that journey that He's had them on.
Yes, and it's, there's that song that one of Stephen's cousins sings, and it's, all along God's hand has
Yeah.
been guiding me. And it's so true because you look at everything that he's doing, and, if you just stop on like one little moment in time, it's either going to be like a mountain peak or it's going to be a valley. But
Mm-hmm.
either way, like whether it's a mountain peak or a valley, he's always there and he's always leading and he's always guiding and he's just present. And of course, it's always more difficult in the valleys, but those mountain peaks are so much more special because of those valleys. Like you need to have those valleys to like really feel those peaks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just seasons of life and it's completely normal to feel all of those and to have all of those happen. But Stephen and I are just determined to stay joyful through it and to, one thing that he says all the time, and our kids are used to it by now. He'll just come up to us and say like, all right, what are we thankful for today? And we have to come up with something right away. And it changes your whole mindset because if you're having a bad moment, right away you have to say something you're thankful for. And he's not like, oh, well, my salvation, of course. But he's like, no, I want you to name something very specific that like happened
Mm-hmm.
today or this week. And I want you to be very specific about it. He wants us to really look at what God is doing
Yeah.
and be thankful for it, even when it's hard. And he especially asks when he knows that our family is going through something that maybe is challenging at the moment. And it
Mm-hmm.
really does keep you focused on what the Lord is doing and how good he is.
That is so
So
good. And yeah, you were talking about those valleys too. And you're talking about fear and learning to trust the Lord. And I've had some valleys of my own, different from yours, but valleys nonetheless. And I think most of us have. But I have learned lessons about God. I don't know that more is the right word, but I have been more assured of the character of God in the valley times. And
Mhm.
that does make the mountains even sweeter because it tends to, when everything's good and life is great and um we just kind of keep going on I get up, I do ministry, I go to bed, I get up, I do ministry, I go to bed. But it's in those moments where you really have to cling to the Lord that you set those markers in your life that then when you do reflect, like you're talking about, you can say, no, God was faithful then, so I know he's going to be faithful now. And I think that really builds your faith and helps you as you continue to serve and to minister and to have hardships come and then another hardship, to be able to look back and see his faithfulness.
Oh, definitely. I think when you're so discouraged at some point and you're like, how am I going to get through this? And it's so much easier to get through it when you remember, okay, well, last month when this happened, this is how God took care of it. Or like last year. And the more of those markers you have, and when, especially when you're conscious of making note of them. Because
Mhm.
sometimes, like the big things we'll note them, but sometimes it's also little things. It's good to be able to like maybe write it down and say like,
Mhm.
hey, God did this month. Let me remember that because I'm going to need to be encouraged at some point, probably in the near future. And he does encourage us through those moments where it's like, hey, look, I took care of you here. I didn't leave you. I never left you. And yes, it was still difficult, but I still loved you and I still was there for you. And I love that because I don't know how anyone could keep serving for any amount of time anywhere with just the regular everyday discouragements of life. You have to be encouraged somehow, and the Bible is there. It's always going to give words of encouragement because that's how God speaks to us, but also like looking through the past and seeing how God has done it. It's another constant reminder of how
Mhm.
he does things for us,
Yeah.
and I love that.
Well, that is so good. And I love what you said about how your husband challenges you to think of something specific that you're thankful
Mhm.
for. I know we both were under Pastor Sexton's influence, and nothing is dynamic until it's specific. I love that.
Yes.
That's great. I have another Christian friend who was struggling with some depression and insomnia and different things. And she saw a doctor, a secular doctor who was not a Christian, but he told her, he's like, I think you should keep a gratitude journal. And every day, just write down something that you're thankful for. And
Mhm.
she has come out of that. But looking back and reflecting on that, she was like, it took a secular doctor to kind of key me into, oh, yeah, this is a biblical principle that
Right.
really is powerful. And so I think that's so good, that reminder for all of us, wherever we are, wherever we're serving, whether you're a full-time ministry missionary or faithful, layman, um, we have so much to be thankful for. And I think remembering that really focuses our perspective on the Lord. Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad that you shared just these different things, because too, another thing that I'm trying to accomplish in these conversations is really just to help raise an awareness to missionaries, to other places in the world, to the reality that yeah, we kind of have a unique life, maybe different than your average person, but we're people. And we've
Mhm.
got problems. We've got sin that we battle in our own lives. We've got kids that we're trying to raise to be polite. We've got marriages and, just all of these different things. We're just normal people, just serving the Lord in a different place. Um, so I'm glad that you mentioned just some of the different things that you've been through or that you've dealt with being in that part of the world, to just help people to think through, like, oh, I need, first of all, I think it's just so important for people to pray for missionaries. I feel like every Christian needs to have that as an active part of their life, something they teach their children.
Yes.
Um, but I'm
And
glad you
even
mentioned,
missionaries.
yes, yes.
Missionaries need to pray for other missionaries.
Yes, for sure. For sure. And I've noticed that even since being a missionary, like it's added a whole nother level of how I pray for missionaries, because
Yes.
I'm experiencing some things now. It's not easy being away from family. It's not easy raising kids away from grandparents and adapting to a different culture. And we didn't have another language, but some people have that struggle and just brings a lot.
Mhm.
So I think it's great when we can really just hold up each other's arms and encourage each other through prayer. That's a great way that I think everybody can be involved in missions around the world.
Yes, I agree for sure.
Well, do you mind to share with us as we close just a few ways that we can pray for your family specifically and for your ministry there?
Okay. Well, as far as family, we homeschool. And so if you can pray for that, I didn't grow up thinking, oh, I'm going to be a homeschool mom one day. And so I think I love teaching my children. but it's definitely a challenge because I feel like every year it's very new and um, it's just a challenge. I want to make sure that they get a good education, that it's well-rounded. And, I want them to embrace this culture, but I also want them to know very much about American culture. And then, of course, I'm Canadian, so
Mhm.
like Canadian culture. And then my husband's French, so French culture. And I feel like sometimes it's a little overwhelming. I'm like, you can't be everything for everybody all the time. And then, they need to learn more of their French but we also do school in English. So just pray as
Mm,
far as the balance of all of that,
yeah.
um, that I would do the right thing for
Mhm.
them, that, just to keep going and to give everything that I can as their mother. I love them and I want them to do well and to learn well, to, be smart children, but I also want them to love the Lord and to love this country. And so sometimes finding that balance between homeschool and ministry and how to implicate them into everything, it's been a little hard. And then also pray for us that we would stay healthy. I think one of the challenges that comes with living here is just the different tropical diseases. In
Mm,
general, we stay very healthy, but every once in a while, like malaria comes about, dengue fever, typhoid. Sometimes it's kind of all these things all together.
yeah.
And when you're down with one of them, you're down for a while. So if it's me, then Stephen has to take care of the kids by himself, and that's hard because then it affects ministry. Or if it's the kids, then you worry for the children and you want to make sure that they're well. So with
Yeah.
either me or Stephen going back to the clinic, making sure they're okay with medication. So just pray. Health is definitely one of the biggest challenges here. When we're
Mhm.
healthy, everything is fine, but it makes you realize how very special and important having good health is on the mission
Yes.
field.
Yeah.
And then as far as ministry, obviously we have the two church plants. So we're training pastors. And so just pray that the training would go well, especially with the second church. It's getting, the building is being finished right now. And so pray
Mm.
that that would go well. And then in the fall this year, we have the second semester of the Evening School of the Bible that Crown has done. Stephen has taken the time to translate all the courses into French.
Oh, wow.
And so now we've been able to start that. So he started the first semester last year, and I think we had like 30 something students from the community and some from our church that came. And so we really want to keep that going. It's just such a great way to reach out to people that are in
Mhm.
the community that work everyday jobs. They can't be part of a full-time Bible program, but they just want to learn more about what the Bible teaches. And this is just one time a week for a full semester. And we've had some really great feedback from the last semester. So we're starting the second semester in September. So pray for that.
Wow. Well, that is really exciting to hear about. And that's, wow, quite the undertaking for him to translate all of that. But I think that's so great that he did that. Now that resource is available.
Yeah, it
So
was his COVID
wonderful.
project. So
I was just talking to my husband the other day and I was like, for as wild as 2020 was, and in the moment, I think everybody was like, what on earth is going on? A lot of good things came out of it.
yes.
I just time and time again, we were just interviewing a friend. Simeon and I actually interviewed him together. He wrote a book, and the book came out of the COVID era, and like all these things that God is
Hmm.
using now came out of that extra time He gave us that
Yep.
year. So that's neat to hear. No, nothing is
Yep.
wasted when God's in control.
No, it's not.
Yeah. Well, Julie, I will be praying for these things specifically. My family will be praying for these things. And I hope many of the ladies will join in as well, praying for your family, praying for your ministry. Thank you so much for sharing with us about your life and your ministry there in Burkina. It sounds like an amazing place, just with beautiful people who need the gospel. So thank you
Yes.
so
Well,
much
thank
for
you for
joining.
praying.
Yeah,
Thank you. And thanks for having me on here and for this opportunity to just share about Burkina and our life and just how God's been so good to us. So thank you.
you're welcome.